Good afternoon. I'm Susie Monagan, and I'm on leave from my university in New York, where I'm the manager of audience development in the theater department, and I teach arts management. So it's been an incredible opportunity for me to be here in Ireland. I got the Fulbright grant to be here. And my scholarship here and there for the past 10 years has been looking at the creative economy in a rural context in upstate New York where I live. So it's been great to be able to be here in Ireland in the West and to be able to continue that within a completely different country. So the surfing metaphor here is deliberate. I am midstream in looking at this research. So I just started it at the beginning of September. So it's maybe a little shallow at the moment, and also a nod to our friends in Sligo and elsewhere on the northern coast where, surfing has they've gotten a lot of attention. It's a big mecca now, so yeah. All right, this piece of research is really focused on the people of the creative economy. So I've come in and I've proposed and I have done in-depth interviews with 26 creatives who are engaged in a range of activities in the 7 counties in the west of Ireland. And I designed the questions to get at values and priorities of these people and to try to understand the extent that their rural location has presented obstacles as well as opportunities to them and has opened up their ideas about networking. So the hope was that I could add complexity and context to some of the other activities of the Creative Edge that are more at the mile-high level. So this is where I was. The little dots all represent people in interviews I did, and in a range of activities: theater, venue management, festivals, spectacle, craft. But that's where I was. And I was looking for geographic distribution as well as a range of types of activities. But I really wanted to look at people who understood that they were contributing to their local economies, whether they were creating jobs or bringing money, funding from outside into their communities. I wanted to look at a variety of types of organizational mission. Were they more market-driven? Were they more artistic product-driven? Were they community development driven? Some of them are, hybrids in that, but to look at a mix there. So I had a large range. I had a small 12,000 euro theater festival. I had a large, 3 million a year for-profit company, and yet there are quite a few similarities across those 26 people. Very interesting, despite the range. So the first set of questions turned out to be quite provocative, which was, do you bring more of the skills of an artist or an entrepreneur? Now, this may have been a cultural misstep on my part. An entrepreneur is pretty well established in the US, I would say. As you have social entrepreneurs. Here it was really, I felt, associated with profit motive. And so it took a little wrangling between me and the interviewee to try to get, a sense of, well, what are we really talking about here, and does that apply to me? So I had a range of responses, but the majority said they did, think that what they were doing was using entrepreneurial skills. Some said both, some said neither. They preferred these other labels instead: producers, creators, and one was an artist. But I think that this quote here from one of them sort of sums it up, that the extreme economic times have made all of these people more entrepreneurial, by any means necessary. They were looking to get their enterprise going. So she says, creative thinking and creative management, making the decisions that count, that keep you successful. So even though it's coming from commercially driven concept of entrepreneurial, but the principles that we've had to employ over the last few years are about getting to the same outcome. Although we're not a commercial organization, it's about finding a way to continue doing what we want to do. So So I asked how people came by their artistic skills. Many had formal, been through degree programs. On the other hand, the entrepreneurial skills, though there were a few younger people, interestingly, who had degrees in arts management, most of them, as you can see, were on the job or self-taught. So I think that's worth paying attention to in terms of going forward. So then I asked a few questions that were really trying to uncover values and priorities with this enterprise. So I asked how important financial stability was on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most important. Virtually everybody said 5. So, and 2/3 get public funding, of these organizations get public funding. So they saw themselves as real stewards of public funds, which is good. Next, how important is it that your enterprise be recognized externally, on a national scale, on an international scale. Also important, and the way that they were measuring that were things like funding, media, and clients and patrons, external, also opportunities to sell abroad or to sell more broadly nationally outside their immediate rural area. And then finally, with these 1 to 5 questions, how important is it to you that the enterprise be engaged locally? Now, this had a broad range. The value there is 4, but some organizations said this is absolutely essential to who we are and what we do. Others said no interest, in engaging locally. But I thought what it pointed out, by asking these questions side by side about external audiences and then local audiences, it brought up for me, I started noticing some mission confusion in organizations where they really hadn't identified what their priorities were in terms of were they focusing externally or locally. And also, is that well prioritized within the organization? Does everybody kind of know what's most important, and are your activities, your daily, weekly activities in step with what these values are? Okay, so this is going to sound exactly what Aisling just told you. But what are some of the opportunities for the artists and entrepreneurs in your area? So you can see them there. Interestingly, I thought geolocated or specific funding. So maybe if it's a smaller pot in rural areas, but there are fewer people trying to get their hands on it. So that can be an asset. Less competition, fewer distractions, supportive community, etc. And then what are some of the challenges? Not terribly surprising there. Isolation, low standard accepted, lack of professionalism, immigration, etc. And just to be clear, these are each things that many more than one person reported. These are things that I was hearing over and over again. Okay, and how does your location affect your ability to network? I don't think there was one person who didn't tell me about how Dublin-centric the country is. So, I heard a lot of stories about hard to get attention. The word click was used many times talking about Dublin. From where I sit, that's unacceptable. And from also my hat as audience development person, it's a dead-end street. It's a red flag to have things operating this way, to be Dublin-centric. So I don't know what to say to you except that it's essential that the Arts Council, that the Crafts Council be brought to bear for what their charge is, which is to serve the whole country, and that they get themselves to peripheral regions and serve the creatives who are there. I'm still trying to understand how it can even happen. So even in a country with places like New York and LA, believe me, the senators in Montana get their fair share of whatever money is being distributed. So anyway, I think it's critical. So this is kind of a flyby of the research, but I do have 3 recommendations. And these have to do with networking. I heard about this phenomenon that I kind of framed as networking in place, which there are a lot of these experiences people have in the really rural peripheral areas where they're inviting people from all over the world to their little corner of the world and giving them an incredible immersive experience, engaging with them really deeply, and then maintaining those relationships over years. And so they're not leaving to go network, they're staying, and they're doing incredible work and bringing people toward them. So there were 3 or 4 very clear examples of that. And I did do a poster over there about one of the examples. So I didn't have time to talk to you today about the case, but I did a poster about it if you're interested. So that's an interesting kind of way of approaching networking, understanding that it's very, very difficult to actually get to where you want to be. Then networking internationally. So 20 out of 26 of these people that I interviewed are already doing work internationally, whether it's bringing international artists in for a festival or whether it's going and selling internationally. They're already engaged in this quite a bit. So, maybe there's the potential to leapfrog over Dublin and to go ahead and network in and develop markets abroad. And certainly the Creative Edge feels like a very appropriate platform for doing that, starting today with the 3 other countries that are represented here. Also, networking locally. I didn't hear a lot of evidence of networking in localities across art forms, and a lot of is made of Galway and the big 3 that emerged, Magna's and the Galway Arts Festival and Druid. And just for me as an outsider saying, those are not the same art forms. They do have points of contact, but I think it's important to maybe point out that there's synergy among those art forms, even though they're not, doing exactly the same thing, and that maybe more of this local networking among arts organizations needs to happen, even in pretty small places. Okay. This goes back to the sort of training and development idea. There seem to be some gaps in these areas. Producing, maybe we need coursework and experiences for young people in project management, company management, producing, and certainly resource development, and that can be in the not-for-profit or the for-profit context, and maybe push it down into the undergraduate degree programs, and then certainly vocationally too, as people need to drop in and upskill. Okay, this last recommendation is about advocacy. We have an organization in the US called Americans for the Arts, which is an arts advocacy organization. It is not funded by the government. I think it's unreasonable to expect a government agency to be lobbying the government, and that you need this like third way of an advocate who will lobby the government on the behalf of these arts organizations with the charge of the arts organizations. And so it seems to me like Americans for the Arts is incredibly valuable, giving networking opportunities. People from all over the country, we go to national conferences in marketing and promotion, for example, and more general policy, what's coming down the pipeline in policy, how should we respond to it? And then data, incredibly valuable. You can't expect an arts organization to have somebody out there crunching data numbers in terms of what their economic impact is. I know DeVos is encouraging organizations to do it, and if they have the capacity, wonderful, but most don't. And so having Americans